Nationalism was the most powerful idea of the 1800s. In nationalism, the people are loyal to their nation instead of the king. Nationalism fueled the making of nation-states and unity under one government. The effects of nationalism. The French Revolution and Napoleon spread the ideas of liberalism and nationalism across Europe. These ideas led to several outbreaks or riots in the 1820s, 30s, and 40s, the most important of these being the revolutions of 1848. Liberal and nationalist ideas gave reformers a more realistic idea of how to achieve their goals. The revolutions of 1848 especially influenced Eastern Europe as well as Italy and Germany. Bismarck and German unification, realpolitik. The formal unification of Germany occurred on January 18, 1871 at the Palace of Versailles. Prussia, the leading German power at the time, was ruled with pragmatic, no-nonsense view, which eventually came to be known as realpolitik. Otto von Bismarck, who was appointed the minister-president of Prussia in 1862, expressed realpolitik unification method in his famous Blood and Iron speech. He stated, "The great question of time will not be resolved by speeches and majority decisions, that was the mistake of 1848 and 1849, but by iron and blood." Bismarck always pursued realistic goals by any available method instead of pursuing an ideology. The Franco-Prussian War. The Franco-Prussian War, which lasted from July 1870 to May 1871, put the French Empire against the Kingdom of Prussia and its allies in North German Confederation. The conflict of the war emerged due to tensions regarding the German unification. Over a 5-month span, the German forces defeated French armies in a series of battles fought across northern France. After their victory, the German states proclaimed their union as a German empire under the Prussian king, Wilhelm I. The Franco-Prussian War established both the German Empire and the French Third Republic. The unification of Germany into an empire shifted the balance of power, and Otto von Bismarck maintained great authority for 2 decades. Garibaldi, Cavour, and the Italian unification. The Italian unification was the political and social movement that united the different states of the Italian peninsula to the Kingdom of Italy. It was a very long process achieved by a variety of treaties and individuals, including Count Cavour and Giuseppe Garibaldi. Count Cavour was the author of the Second Risorgimento, which was a nationalist newspaper that became the name for Italian unification. Cavour endorsed the economic doctrines of the middle class, and he also worked for a secret alliance with Napoleon III against Austria. He constantly worked to unite Italy. His counterpart, Garibaldi, was a soldier and Italian patriot whose conquest of Sicily and Naples with his guerrilla red shirts led to the formation of the Italian state. King Victor Emmanuel and Cavour had once tried to stop Garibaldi, but during his conquests they did not dare interfere. After his victory, he held polls which allowed him to hand over the whole of southern Italy to King Victor Emmanuel.
Next we have imperialism, which is the seizure of a country or territory by a stronger country. Imperialism contributed to both positive and negative effects. The brighter side is that local warfare was decreased, sanitation was improved, and schools were created. Economy was also open to expansion. However, on the other hand, the after effects of battles brought on famines and diseases. These smaller countries lost control of their land and lost independence, as well as their tradition of individual cultures were being broken apart. There are many forms of imperialism. Colony is simply a territory already controlled by a foreign power. In a protectorate, the territory has its own government, but is under control and influence of a bigger power. Powerful nations claim interest and power over smaller nations in sphere of influence, but they exert dominance by exclusive investment in managing trading privileges. Under economic imperialism, a stronger nation dominates a weaker one for purely business interests. Now there are 2 types of control, indirect and direct. Indirect is when the bigger power still permits local government officials, but just limits self-rule. Direct control replaces all existing officials, and there is absolutely no self-rule permitted. The scramble for Africa was a period of rapid colonization. European powers competed for this land and were able to accomplish this because of technology superiority like the first automatic machine gun. New transportation like the steam engine and boat provided means for control and navigation. The Europeans invented a vaccine called quinine that prevented them from catching malaria. Lastly, Africa was very diverse with little unity. 14 European nations met at the Berlin Conference to lay down the rules of the division. They proclaimed the Congo and Niger rivers to be neutral and also insisted that one must notify all other countries when claiming territory. They have to show means of effective occupation and political stability. All of this caused wars in South Africa. Shaka, a Zulu chief, maintained a large centralized state with good military organization that defended off the British. However, his successors couldn't keep up the fight, and in 1879 the British invaded and took control. At the Cape of Good Hope resided the Dutch. Dutch farmers named Boers took African land and established their own large farms. The British ended up forcing them to move north, also known as the Great Trek. Up north they ran into the Zulu and fights broke out between them. British imperialism in India began when the Industrial Revolution broke out and Britain became the world workshop, which turned to India for raw materials. Production became solely for British manufacturing and prohibited any Indian competition. The downfall of this was the British took political and economical power, which restricted Indian-owned industries. They also converted to a main production of cash crops. On a positive note, many factors were developed to build a modern economy and improve sanitation and health as well as education. The Europeans competed for lands in Southeast Asia, also known as the Pacific Rim. The Pacific colonies were a great source of tropical agriculture, minerals, and oil. The Dutch East India Company took control over a long chain of Indonesian islands. The Dutch eventually considered Indonesia their home. The British established a major trading port in Singapore and also gained colonies in Malaysia, which became the world's leading rubber export, and in Burma. The French took over Indochina on the Southeast Asian mainland and filled important positions in the government. The impact this had was improved communication systems and transportation that mainly benefited European business. Weak governments were replaced with strong, and migration caused a changed culture and racial makeup. Most Americans disliked the idea of colonizing other nations, but some wanted the United States to fulfill its destiny as a world power, and others wanted new markets and trade possibilities. The United States acquired the Philippine Islands, Puerto Rico, and Guam as a result of the Spanish-American War. The U.S. began to pursue Hawaii in the 1970s, where they'd established sugarcane plantations and had become highly successful. 1893 ruling Hawaiian power was overthrown and the U.S. took control of Hawaii. American intervention in both Latin America and Hawaii resulted in multiple industrial investments. If the U.S. annexed territory, they were granted access to the trade and capital of those territories.